Peace and love and namaste, everybody. Thanks for being here. Hi, PL. Thanks for showing up, all my friends who are live here and all the people who come to watch the videos after they're recorded. Peace and love and namaste. I'm Peter Panagore, MDiv, ex-clergy, and a two-time near-death experiencer. This is not church. No doctrine, no dogma, no Bravo Sierra. I'm going to get in trouble for this, I'm sure. Got in trouble last week for what I said. You might want to watch that video if you haven't. It'll help you understand this one. The church gets it wrong. They say near-death experiences should be interpreted through the Bible, and what doesn't align is dangerously wrong. I say interpret the Bible through the lens of near-death experience. Love above, capital L, capital A, love above, re-lensed the eye of my heart, as it does to everyone touched by the divine. Everything my body, my brain, feels, sees, smells, touches, hears, tastes, and intuits is through that singular, born from above lens, including Jesus, the singular teacher, the teacher of singularity, including Jesus and the not at all literal Bible. The meaning of Yeshua's words come clear through the lens of love and light with capital L's. His words and teachings closely reflect many aspects of my NDE and my born again, born from above life and point of view. That's pretty clearly said. I disagree. And I don't disagree because of my thinking or my knowledge. I disagree because of my experience. So let's pause a moment here, because we all know the world is a warring mess. And the massacre in Maine that happened 54 miles from my house, one of the fellas, his service is in my town this week. Let's spend a moment here. And as I sit in what used to be the safest state in the United States, pause to center in the light, flashing our minds to your most inward holy place, and breathe peace in our hearts out into the world. Three breaths. Breathe out peace. There is no healing like peace of heart. I'll make two mystically true and religiously controversial statements today about the church and Jesus. Jesus called out the powerful religious teacher Nicodemus of the very powerful Pharisees. This ancient Jewish sect clung to the written law and tradition, much like the creationist literalists today. Nicodemus misses the point. Yeshua did not adhere to the law as shown by his many acts of religious disobedience when he repeatedly upheld transcendence, with a capital T, over religion, the spirit over the rules, the truth over the theology. Last Sunday in John chapter 3, we left Jesus and Nicodemus conversing about being born again. Jesus had just told Nicodemus some mind-blowing spiritual information. Jesus, remember, always teaches from his own personal mystical experiences. He is his own lens, not the written word, although he sometimes quotes it when it's in his favor. And he always keeps to this teaching style. He teaches from experience. In this passage, Jesus sounds like he's describing the after effects of my near-death experience. This is in John 3. I feel every moment that I am born from above, born again. It's not something that turns off. It's not something that goes away. It's a continual flow of blessing and disruption. Why disruption? Because it makes me an outsider in the world. But the blessing makes me care a lot less about that. It feels like a continually, this is metaphor, heated buzz or tingle or perception of all things that are made of light, or an attunement coming from my senses, from the frequency inside of everything outside of me, simultaneously rising from the deepest connective core inside of me. This is the same as that. It's a roaring waterfall and a view from above my head, out my eyes, seeing my hands, feeling them as something other than me, a place I live, not what I am. This is a natural form of non-attachment. It's natural to me because it came after I died. This natural form of non-attachment in my life is because, and here's one of the controversial statements I'm about to make, is because of my previous ascent into heaven. And we'll come back to that. Last week, Yeshua continued in this conversation. I am born of the Spirit, and everyone born of the Spirit knows that the Spirit is like the wind, blowing where it wills, and we hear the sound of it, but the Spirit's origin is beyond our brain's capacity of understanding. That's what he meant. He's a mystic. So he says that, and Nicodemus this week, Nicodemus is like, how can what you say be true? And Yeshua answers, what? Wait, you're a religious teacher and thought leader, an educated man, and with all your scriptural study and theological knowledge, you don't understand how heaven and earth interact in the real time right now? With all your knowledge, you don't get that? It's really obvious to Jesus that Nicodemus has no idea what he's talking. That it's obvious to Jesus that Nicodemus has no idea what Jesus is talking about. It goes right over his head. Have you ever tried to describe your experience of the higher frequency to someone who hasn't or can't feel it? It's kind of impossible. It takes one to know one, capital O. It takes one to know one. The one knows itself. So Yeshua blusters in frustration from the ground, and this is where it says, verily, verily, I say unto you, from the ground of trust. all capitalized, ground of trust. Truly, I'm telling you, we speak about what we know, what he experienced. Noetic knowledge, wisdom. We speak about what we know and we testify about what we have seen. This is not something that is imagination for Jesus or head knowledge or book knowledge. This is a journey he took. And obviously, Nicodemus, you don't get it. And Jesus starts with his direct experience of God from the ground of trust itself. He says, from the ground of trust itself. That's his direct experience of God. Verily, verily, I say unto you, truly, truly, I say unto you, the very essence of what he is saying comes from his direct experience, not because it's in a book somewhere. And I want to thank Aramaic translator Dr. Neil Douglas Klotz again for that translation, the ground of trust. Jesus only teaches noetic knowledge and wisdom that comes directly from his experience. He teaches what he knows, and he doesn't waver into guesses or speculation. Thank you, Sylvester, for the super chat. Jesus only teaches from what he knows, and he doesn't waver into guesses or speculation. He testifies to the truth he has seen and experienced. And this is a helpful rule of thumb for spiritual teachers, especially theologians, preachers, pastors, and priests. And I've met a few who do teach from their mystical experience, and many who reflect the Pharisees. Next, we notice that Jesus switches from an I statement to a we statement, from the singular personal to the personal plural. It's as if Yeshua, while talking, is suddenly upraised from his lower self into integration with his higher self. He merges and he speaks from the we of the higher self, which includes his earthly self. And it's actually an example of what he was trying to describe to Nicodemus. Of course, Nicodemus doesn't get it. How can he? Noetic understanding comes with the presence itself. The spiritually transformative understanding happens as the presence arrives. Nick can't see what he hasn't seen, and he can't know what he hasn't experienced. It takes one to know one. But good old Nick, he wants to know. It's why he's sneaking around in the middle of the night in the dark to talk with the rebel Jesus so nobody will see him. He wants to understand and he can't. So frustrated, Jesus says, I just told you about my earthly after effects, this born again thing, this thing about being in the wind and the spirit, and you don't get it. So you're never going to understand what happened to me in heaven, where there is no physical thing, nothing physical, material, or worldly. This is how I hear the words of Jesus. They reflect exactly what happened to me, what's happening to me. I feel his frustration. I used to be very frustrated about this. Less so now that I'm much more integrated. And I'm not alone in that. I think most near death experiencers struggle with the same problem. How do we put into words the unspeakable or describe the indescribable experiences we had when we were dead and ascended into heaven? We have a hard enough time trying to figure out how to talk about these after gifts, how to live with them. And when we talk about them, many people don't understand us. How can they? Only people who've had similar experiences can understand in the center of their heart. Belief helps this. If you haven't had an experience and you're a believer, why do you believe? Is it because there's some deep part of you, intuitive, that says that there's more? Well, kiddo, that's experience. Stick with that. And everybody We had this retreat yesterday in South Paris, Maine. A bunch of folks showed up, had a long talk, and somebody was talking about the earthly after effects of mystical experiences that aren't NDEs and how difficult it is to talk about. Shared death experiences, after death communications. Let's try to normalize them in society. And when you have the opportunity to talk about it, talk about it. And Jesus was alone in the world, like himself. He was kind of like the only one he knew. Although, I wonder if he ever talked to Lazarus after Lazarus died and come back. But we're not alone. And then Jesus says that what has been true during his lifetime isn't true during ours. What he says next is that it's not true anymore. If it ever was true, he says, no one has ascended into heaven except the one who descended from heaven, except the Son of Man. And this just isn't right on two counts. And the first is that the Son of Man translation is from the patriarchal Koine Greek society. But in the Peshitta, the Aramaic, remember Jesus spoke Aramaic, and the Peshitta is a collection of gospels that the church kicked out a long time ago that Dr. Neil Douglas Klotz has been translating through the lens of mysticism. The Peshitta translates not the Son of Man, but the integrated child of humanity, which is much more in line with the singleness teaching of Jesus, that you can do what I can do, he says to us. We too can integrate our higher selves with our lower selves. This has been the task of my life. In his exchange with Nick, Jesus has this shift from the I to the we. He says, I this, and then he says, we that. And it's like he's re-experiencing his own integration. It's like the spirit in Christian language, spirit comes upon him. In Eastern language, the kundalini rises, the prana rises, the integration occurs. And it's shown when he moved from the singular to the plural. And it shows in his born again, born from above, wind spirit after effects that he was trying to talk to Nicodemus about. And that was last week. You might want to check that out. The after effects are a form of integration. Now, I want you to hear this. The after effects are a form of integration. It doesn't feel like it, okay? Because now I've lived this sort of split life. I've kind of had to figure out how to put these together. Why are they a form of integration? Because they're happening in real life. That's why. Because you experience them in your body. So that's a form of integration. You're already partway there towards your integration. And the Aramaic means the integration of your lower and higher selves, because we're living in the world. It's not just the ascent to heaven. It's the melding of these two things together. It's the bringing of the divine presence to us by emptying ourselves and allowing this physical experience of this buzz, of this born again vibration that you may have felt in your mystical experience, whatever it was. And maybe it felt like love to you. Maybe it felt like light to you, or peace, or forgiveness, or some frequency that is inexplicable, whatever that is for you. That was an experience of your lower and higher selves integrating. And it kind of goes away. And there are varying degrees, but it never fully goes away. It leaves a gift behind. After effects of NDE are a form of integration because you and your body, you're experiencing this heavenly realm in the here and now. So, part two. This is two parts. And this is what might upset a few church folks. Just to be clear, Jesus isn't the only one who ascended to heaven, despite what he says in the Gospel of John. He's not the only one who ascended and descended. Maybe it was true in his lifetime, but it's not true now. Worldwide, tens of millions of near-death experiencers, including me and maybe you, have ascended into heaven and then descended from heaven to earth. That's what happened to us. And we came back born from above. And unlike Nicodemus, we experience being born from above and we hear the frequency of the wind. And if you want to cultivate that, if you don't want to lose that, dive inside and seek it. Use the doorway that was given to you. Near-death experiencers who encountered the light speak the same words as Jesus. We speak the same words, light and love. Jesus taught about light and love. So I ask you to draw your own conclusion. Was he the only one who ascended and descended? Is he the only integrated child of humanity? Now, granted, he rose from the dead. That's a pretty good trick. Lots of us have died and come back. Try your own conclusions. I'm not raising myself up about Jesus as somebody accused me last week. Just the opposite. Just the opposite. This light, this energy, he said, is here for us. I don't need to deify him or worship him, but I'll follow him. He is my best teacher. Maybe you ascended and descended too. And maybe you don't fit in the church anymore because of that and for other reasons. But here we are. So thanks for being here. Let me know your comments. Thanks for your financial support. It allows me to be here. Visit peterpanagore.love. See you at Mystic Tea Salon at the top of the hour. Link in the show notes. Let's take a peek over at the chat. I'll see you in 6 or 8 minutes at Mystic Tea Salon, but I'll take a moment here to look at the chat. After Effects. For sure, After Effects. I'm having lunch with a friend. Oh, hi, Amy. Let's see. When you speak the truth from your heart, expect and rejoice in the criticism. Thanks, Candyman. It's totally cool. I didn't even ban him. All right. I hope that was helpful to you. Let me know. I'm open to critique, of course, and the lighting and all that stuff, and the volume. Peace and love. See you in a few. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Google, YouTube loves that stuff. Peace.